Dr. Laura Smith, welcome to the madness.
Thank you so much for having me, and I hope I can live up to that introduction.
So, listen, unprecedented. This is the word. It's in every article. It's in every news broadcast here. Unprecedented. So, people be scratching their heads and thinking, what? No former American president has ever been arrested. So let's start with impeachment. How many in history have been impeached?
Well, I've just got to say, there is a very singular incident of one president being arrested in office, and that's Ulysses S. Grant, of all people, the man who saved the Union for the Civil War when he was in office in the 1870s, a speeding ticket for a horse-drawn carriage, no less. But it clearly didn't stick very long. So that's a very singular incident, but I think you're absolutely right in talking about the importance of impeachment. So we have had 4 presidents face impeachment trials. Those are Andrew Johnson. We've had Richard Nixon resign to avoid an impeachment trial. We've had William Jefferson Clinton, Bill Clinton, Andrew Johnson and Bill Clinton being impeached by the House. And of course, most recently, Donald Trump twice impeached by the House.
Just check with Susan. Did Ulysses S. Grant claim it was a witch hunt?
My guess is he settled out of court.
The one that really sticks out, I know, I mean, just right at the top of here, you heard the Clinton clip in the intro to Midnight in America. It's in there. It's in history for forever, of course, but it's the Nixon one and it's Watergate that jumps out. Talk me through that timeline, because I think it's really important, Dr. Laura Smith, in that, you know, he resigned, he was pardoned. There is that presidential honor. There's that. I'm not saying what Nixon did was right. Many people, at all. I'm just saying that from president to president up until recent years, there's always been a connection, hasn't there, regardless of what party they stood for.
Absolutely. And I think the word is really deference. This idea in American society that goes back centuries that you show deference to your leaders, particularly your presidents. And the issue with that, I mean, can you imagine a president trying to face PMQs over here, for example? But if you try and just sort of think about the impact that has. And so what you say about timeline is so important, because if we think about, for example, you could cast forward to looking at 2024 and this question of, okay, well, let's look at Watergate. How is it that last summer we passed the 50th anniversary of Watergate? Look back at 1972, Nixon's running for re-election, Watergate happens, and yet he still gets reelected for a second term. And the reason that happens is because it's a constant drip, drip, drip of the investigation coming out, mostly due to the tireless work at the Washington Post. And this drip, drip eventually culminates in more and more investigation by Congress. And it's the turning of his own party against him, the Republicans turning against him, that forces Nixon to see the writing on the wall and resign. He himself admits he is not a quitter, and nobody would dispute that. But in the end, he feels he absolutely has no choice. And so, despite, being reelected in 1972, it's the fact that this was a very complicated story. Everyone knows that Deep Throat told the investigators, told the journalists to just Bernstein and Woodward to follow the money. And yet for the public to understand this drip, drip, it wasn't fast enough. It wasn't gripping enough to be able to actually see through all this to say, okay, this is really serious. This is something that we should be worried about. And it should affect who we vote for in the election. It wasn't fast enough. So if we fast forward to now, the question is, with all this controversy that's going on, you were just talking about, you were talking about 2 different legal obstacles that Trump is facing. With all of these cases going on, what is it that's going to actually stick in people's minds? And when it comes to the pardon by Gerald Ford, this is something that it creates this precedent that somehow a president, no matter what they face in terms of legal questions or issues, is able to walk off into a sunset and enjoy a nice retirement with their, Secret Service around them, and just sort of, enjoy, in Nixon's case, the California sunset. And that's it. And I'm not sure that in 21st century society that we're in this increasing sense of disillusionment and divisiveness, that people actually are going to find that palatable, especially in the era of things like the Me Too movement. More people want powerful, moneyed people to be held to account. And this is certainly looking like it's going to be heading toward politicians like Donald Trump.
That's bang right, Susan Del Percio. You know, you don't have to go that far back, and you can look at that relationship that was there between George W. Bush and Barack Obama, which seemed fairly strong, and indeed. The picture that came into my mind when Dr. Laura Smith was so expertly sort of charting the decades was Donald Trump sitting beside Barack Obama, in the changeover from president to president. If ever a picture spoke of a change, it's that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the important part, even Nixon, for everything that he did, which was wrong, which is like nothing compared to what Donald Trump did, even for the reasons he was impeached. I mean, putting that aside, one of the reasons why Nixon stepped down, because don't forget, his popularity was still very high. I think that was an excellent point made about how slow and drip, drip, drip the process was against Nixon. He was still riding high in the polls. The thing is he knew it would tear apart the country to see their president under indictment, to see charges, to see it all happen that way. And for the sake of the nation, because he thought he could get away with anything. He said, I could do anything. I'm the president. He decided to resign. Now, did he think he was going to get pardoned? Probably, but that's not it. He knew it would be horrible for the country. And you fast forward and you do see a little peek of about what happens when your country gets so divided. And we saw what happened January 6th. So there is something interesting there. And to me, the biggest, simplest takeaway about the 44 presidents before Donald Trump was, and the one after Donald Trump was, they all love America and served it and revered the office of the president. Donald Trump just cared about what the drapes looked like and what it could do for him.
I'll just say, for the interest of balance, curtains are very important. What about this for a twist, right? Dr. Laura Smith, if Trump is arrested and found guilty in the case of the Stormy Daniels case, it's likely to be a fine. At what stage, how many weeks will go by before the self-styled great unifier that is Joe Biden pardons him? Now there's a twist to the tale, right?
Never going to happen. I'm sorry, I'm going to jump in there. That's never going to happen.
When hell freezes over, yeah. Yes. I mean, just to back up on what was said, I wasn't sure I would go quite so far as to call Nixon a patriot, which I think was what was being implied. But Gerald Ford was certainly, I mean, he was an Eagle Scout, which is a very, very hard thing to get a recognition in the U.S. And he was always guided by very strong morals. And so Gerald Ford certainly thought it was the right thing to do to pardon Nixon for the good of the country. And most people at the time disagreed with him. But when he died in 2006, obviously a post 9/11 moment, people actually looked back and said, okay, that was the right thing to do. Again, I don't think that that's going to be palatable today in any way, shape, or form. And I think it's really interesting, that clip that you played right at the beginning of Ron DeSantis as well, talking about how, okay, well, trying to appeal to both sides of the Republican Party there, and I think it was called a smart thing to do. I think he's definitely trying to have it both ways, just because even the Republicans are so divided. There's just incredible amount of divisiveness right now, and Trump is certainly hoping that he can rely on the base that he relied on January 6th.
Well, at the moment and the days and the weeks and the months ahead, Dr. Laura Smith, so much of what you'll talk about as a presidential historian at Oxford University happened way in the past. Most of it happened before you were born. No doubt, Laura, you're living through the history that the person who's doing your job in 50 years will be teaching.
How do you when I was born. No, I was born a year a Democrat was elected president, so I'm proud of that. But yeah, I think that for me, well, yeah, I don't think in 50 years I'd still be teaching. Who knows with tenure? But there we go. Retirement savings. But you know, I do think that this is definitely something that is a turning point. And people talk, for example, you know, are we in a new party system? Most people say there are 6, and most of American history, it's been Democrat, Republican as one party in the beginning, and then it's a combination of Democrat versus Republicans since the 1850s. It's always been Democrat versus Republicans, but it means something so different. The parties stand for such different things. Obviously, nobody is saying you know, the Republican Party is still the party of Lincoln. You know, they're very different parties, and even though they have the same name and clearly have so many divisive issues in between them, regardless of what divides Democrats versus Republicans on any given day in Congress.
Absolutely. Listen, Dr. Laura Smith, back to Oxford University for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Thank you.